Microtrending.
Welcome back. I'm Gabrielle, and you are listening to Microtrending, the podcast for anything that is having a moment for better or for worse. There is something major, obviously, having a moment for worse. And we will get to that pretty expeditiously today because I want to leave enough time, and then I want this episode plus a Substack post coming out soon to be the last of it. And you probably know what I'm talking about. But as always, things don't exist in a vacuum. We're discussing the life of a showgirl as it relates to all things beige. So we will get to that shortly. I don't really have any major personal updates between last episode and this one, except that I continue to be busy, but you don't need to hear me complain about that. What I will complain about instead, for just a moment, is the fact that it is almost mid October and I don't have an inkling of a Halloween costume yet. And this is nobody's problem to solve except for mine. And I don't even like Halloween. I just think I like dressing up and I like candy. That's it. I am not a spooky person. Like some of you, I'm sure I grew up pretty Catholic. Not like oppressively, but enough that Halloween was not something that was, celebrated as much. It was seen as, at least by my mom, as kind of demonic. And so I never really embraced anything scary. And I have to be real with you, I am extremely terrified of a haunted house. I know that sounds so stupid. I like to think that I have better wits about me than that, but that's not the case. I have whatever the mental disorder is that I am like endlessly fascinated by like the unknown, the paranormal, the extraterrestrial, the concept of hauntings, like all of that. When I was younger, I remember checking out a book about like paranormal activity and the idea of stigmata and just wondering if I was going to get stigmata or something. Like all of that sort of weird shit I have always loved, even like witchcraft, which I don't think is something that would make my mom super happy, but like it appeals to me. Okay. But anything that's like gory or your classic horror movie, anything true crime related, all of that feels too of the earth, like too possible, like slasher shit. I can't do that. And I know I'm missing out on some fantastic cinema. I've been told, I'm aware in terms of those movies at all. I remember being younger and watching The Sixth Sense only because only I don't think I would have chosen to watch it. Maybe now that I'm older and a little braver, but our math teacher, for whatever reason, like I don't know if I told the story before or not. I definitely told the story to many a friend. Um, but when we were done with a math test, and everyone was done, we had options in what on like our reward as a class, and often everyone voted to watch a movie. And the movies that this man had in his arsenal were a bunch, they were just his favorite movies. Okay, forget about like fuck appealing to children. Okay, or at least to middle schoolers. A bunch of Muppet movies, not the worst, an interesting choice. And then The Sixth Sense. And, I think a lot of kids in my class thought that they were too cool for the Muppet movies. And so, by a show of hands, The Sixth Sense won more than once. And so, more than once, I had to watch that movie as a young person. against my will. And I have to say, a pretty good movie. But it did scar me. Um, when I was younger. And then the only other time, besides, I think I voluntarily watched Poltergeist or something, I don't know why, was I took like a summer creative writing class in high school. And this guy that was teaching this class, I think was, I don't know what his qualifications were. It was supposed to be about like pop culture was like the theme of the class, very relevant to my interest at that time and now. And he just took the liberty of applying like whatever his pop culture interests were very fucking bizarre. And he was really interested in true crime, huge red flag, and horror movies. So for no reason at all, we watched The Nightmare on Elm Street and then had to write something about it. So, to wrap it all up, when it comes to my exposure to horror cinema, it has been at the hands of adult educators trying to impress upon young children their like niche taste and interest. I was not moved either time. Anyway, what does this have to do with Halloween costumes? I'm just trying to paint a picture here. The only time I've ever gone scary for a costume was one time doing like a zombie Wednesday Addams in like a couple's costume. I actually don't know what my ex was wearing. I think he was just a zombie, and I just decided to be Wednesday, slash zombie. And then in third grade, my version of scary was dressing up as an alien. And I was part of like a kids' music ensemble. We played at a school assembly, and I refused to take my alien mask off because I was like crying because like it wouldn't have looked like I was wearing a costume without the mask. So I could not see the violin for the life of me, but I was an alien, and that was my version of scary. So if you have any non-spooky costume ideas, let me know. I hate to beige myself here, but I usually go the route of some sort of animal with something else attached to it. I've been the Trix rabbit before. I've been other kinds of rabbits. I was a deer once. I was Cupid a few years ago. Not very, this is coming from someone who does not really embrace the holiday, but I do love dressing up. So I'm willing to take some creative inspiration. Um, so we'll see. One of my friends told me that I should be Trixie from the Fairly Odd Parents, which I fucking love that idea, but I don't think this hair is going to fit in like a darker hair wig. So we're gonna figure it out. But that's next on my to-do list because the rest of my to-do list is all work related and writing and stuff, which I still love, but I'm trying to have a little bit more fun in my life. So that's where things are right now.
Microtrending.
I've had a lot of coffee today, if you couldn't tell. Before we talk about anything related to the life of a showgirl, I did want to also talk about this article that I ran to. I believe it was last week. I never know what week I'm living in, and that's how you should live. Anyway, there was an article that I saw last week, a paywalled article that I just want to touch on a little bit because it really is like the cross section of a lot of things that I hope that this podcast is about, certainly related to the stuff that I post all the time. And then also just the nature of the internet and the echo chamber, okay, that we exist in, specifically those of us who read and pay attention to like women's fashion stuff and aesthetics. Anyway, the article was posted by Polyester Zine. I believe they're a digital publication, UK based, and it came across my feed because I am following this account. They post about topics that are roughly in the same universe as interests that I have, things that I post about. Their whole vibe is like fashion and art with a pretty explicitly feminist bent, which is all great. To me, they kind of feel like Nylon Magazine crossed with a few other publications and then wearing prescription glasses. And sitting here now, I am not writing them off completely, but I just want to share my impression of this specific article and the comment section because, baby, I was underwhelmed and a little surprised. So, this opinion piece, which, because it is a paywalled article, which I did not pay for, what I'm taking from it is the title and the snippets that are in the carousel post with accompanying imagery. This article was alleging that there is maybe not a crisis or an epidemic, but a happening that women are now being pressured to perform intellectualism. Like we are pressured to perform everything because society, capitalism, etc. And I do think that is fair to say. The latter, that we are often pressured to perform everything for those reasons. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because I feel like my question is kind of unanswered still. Here, I want to know if you think that performative intellectualism for women is real, number one. I'm sure it exists to some extent, but is it statistically significant enough of a problem to bring up, and is it an actual problem? Because I remain unconvinced. I want to know if this is a real problem worth sounding the alarm on, worth journalism about, beyond that time when Hailey Bieber was joking about reading. I don't remember what that was for, but she like pulled a book out of her bag and like, oh my gosh, I am so smart. You would never know. That's not a joke that landed for me, but I also have not been seeing a lot of stuff that's like that at all. So I'm confused. This article honestly reminded me of that Dazed magazine article that I had beef with, that was making the argument that dressing beige and like neutral normcore is punk now. My beef is that's not the truth and that's not happening. And also, where are you seeing this happening? It's making me wonder if there's some sort of cultural difference, and I don't mean to be, ignorant or, about this, but is stuff happening in the UK that tangibly different? Then I can believe it. Like the US is kind of like uniquely in the dumpster right now, as it has been, forever. But, these publications I think are on the other side of the pond. And I would like to know, because this is not what I think we're seeing at large. So I'm willing to be wrong about that. But both of these articles piss me off a little bit. And again, for this polyester scene one about performing intellectualism, I only responded to what I could see in the carousel post. That's what I have to respond to. So I do want to quote one of them here just for context. And you can see they posted it on their Instagram page. But let's just take a quick look at one of the frames. The author said, "Looks have always ruled, and digital trends have long conceptualized women's femininity as the sum of their hotness. I personally think those are two different things. Anyway, however, with the prevalence of AI, knowledge is championed. It seems that there is a pressure to overcome, quote, brain rot or lowbrow content. Respectfully, and this is me speaking now, where is that pressure coming from to overcome brain? I would love to know. Literally the opposite is happening. We're being encouraged. We see and hear this every day. We're being, if not like explicitly encouraged, then like subliminally, the messages that we're seeing is that we should be taking shortcuts with AI. That's becoming normalized. Um, at the same time, we're being fed anti-intellectual, women belong barefoot in the kitchen or in the cul-de-sac with their CTE NFL fiance propaganda. That's what we're receiving. But carry on. Back to the snippet here. When effortless beauty wasn't enough to emulate alone, the internet found a new virtue. What matters now is not simply being intelligent, forget that, but curating the appearance of intellect. My intelligence is insulted reading this. And the other handful of paragraphs, one of them said that performing intellectualism could just be women falling into a consumer trend, which is bad, you know? Anyway, I had some strong feelings. And I read through the paragraphs many times to like see if I was missing something. And there were of course like little pieces that I agreed with that I don't think anyone could argue with. You know, the part about capitalism is bad. Women are asked to perform. To be a woman is to perform. Like we've heard that, understood. But I did make a few comments on the post, including, forgive me for asking, how does one measure whether a woman is performing being smart or not? How are we gauging that? Like surface level. I can understand if you've known somebody to be just a grade A idiot your whole life and all of a sudden they're carrying around James Joyce. Okay. Or a geometry textbook. You know, maybe some questions, but like if you're just scrolling and you're passing that judgment on like that bitch isn't really smart, I can tell. Um, and I don't mean in cases of obvious satire of like performing intellectualism, but like how are we measuring that? I think that's a fair question. Um, and I wasn't the only person in the comments, also. Plenty of other people were, I would say, arguably more upset than I was that they would publish something like this. But there was actually a comment, and I don't know if this person knew the author or the publication or whatever. It doesn't matter. They said that the people who were disagreeing with the article, they were the ones who were actually performatively intellectual because they're not getting it. And I didn't want to respond to that comment. I didn't post the article. I don't want to get into the weeds on this, but we get it, sweetie. And again, and I don't need to keep defending the author because I don't know them and I have no skin in the game here, but I can, you know, throw them a bone that maybe they wanted to make a statement again about how women can never get it right. Barbie movie monologue, right? How they're always performing, as I've mentioned like 3 different times now. Like we all agree on that, but there's the intent Like if that's your thesis, like there's the intent and then there's what we're actually seeing and interpreting. Like let's take that to the next level. And if I'm polyester, if I'm this publication, I would be mindful of, because they were so defensive in the comments. They were like, that's not what the article is about. You should read the full article. Actually, the author says this. Actually, the author says XYZ. If you are having to defend every single claim that other people are making about how they're interpreting it, you fucked up somewhere, because people were taking legitimate offense to it, like myself included. You either fucked up in the article itself, possible, we can't see it, or in the snippets you chose. So perhaps a lesson in digital journalism. I don't know. Because you can't say, and I don't know if they said this in the snippet or in a comment, but I noted that they were saying, I think it was in the snippet, that, this phenomenon isn't about women who actually like reading. And then shortly after, they're saying that, the rest of women performing intellectualism might be trapped in some sort of consumer identity trend. Like I said before, how are we measuring and who gets to be who? I did not intend to insert like a personal anecdote here, because I feel like this argument, I don't have to have a personal attachment to this issue to be bothered by it. And this is ultimately water off my back, since this was a while ago, but in college, I remember learning that there was some other girl who was bothered that I got a school publication editor-in-chief position, because she thought that I got it because of my appearance, like the optics of it, which, if you think about it, is kind of cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Of all roles where someone's physical appearance could matter, I'm pretty sure it's not that. So anyway, I learned about that after the fact, and it's still insane to me, but there is judgment that is passed around in that way. And if I were to say anything to polyester, I guess I would say, besides what I've already said in the comments, is that like intellectualism, like whatever that means to you, is not like clean girl or some sort of fashion trend, and somebody just deciding to, post a picture of like a book in their tote bag, because it's aesthetic. Like that, I would not categorize that as performing intellectualism. It might be part of like an academia aesthetic that somebody's going for, but it's really dangerous, I think, to suggest that anything like this, like aspiring toward greater intellect, like any of that could be trendy, and like you might not be serious about it, in part because there are so many subsets of women, especially women of color, whose intellectualism is assumed to be performative and effortful because of racism. Let's not forget that. A recently departed podcaster, if you don't remember, said it himself about specific Black women. The eugenics myths of it all haven't died out. Okay, people are still tending to that fire. So to wrap this rant all up, I guess, if we are in some unspoken competition to out-signal each other with signals of intellect, whatever those are. I have glasses. I wear contacts because wearing my glasses gives me a headache. but I would be the same person with or without them. Glasses, tote bags, throwing books at each other that we've never read. If we're in a competition to outsignal each other, the issue isn't the books. Think about it. But if we are actually in a battle of the intellects, that is serving to make us smarter, I don't think that could hurt. I don't promote it. I think everyone should be on their own journey and like take it upon themselves to, not use ChatGPT and educate themselves, but like let Dua Lipa have her book club. She is not hurting anyone. And she is making at least one formerly brain fried pop music stan complimentary. She is making that person a better person and a smarter person. Some commotion for Dula Peep. Anyway, I know that I'm always usually trying to come at things for more of like a humor and entertainment lens, but this is just one of those things that really got me going, and I felt obligated to say something about, and say even more now, because it made me reflect on the stuff that I'm doing too. But most of all, it reminded me of how echo chambery things can get. I know I'm guilty of participating in that too. I do always try, I want to like provide like a new insight, even if I'm talking about the same trending bullshit. I'm trying to, throw a vitamin in the mix. But for this article specifically, I would take a step back if I were them and ask if the thing that we need to be worried about is a Sylvia Plath baby tea, or if you remember, that woman promoting princess treatment and essentially being a mute in front of her husband and reinforcing those kind of standards. Like, two things can be true. I believe that, but I think there are some actual like propaganda wars that we could be fighting that have nothing to do with the girlies are being smart.
Microtrending.
And that's that on that. Let me know if you're feeling the pressure to be smarter and perform intellectualism. Let me know in the comments. If you are feeling the pressure to be dumber, would also love to know that too. Maybe we can get some data out of this. Speaking now of actually performing intellectualism, like at the highest level. And I know I'm immediately eating my words here because, yes, it is actually an issue for at least one person. I do have to mention and dig into a little bit Taylor Swift's new album, The Life of a Showgirl. The life of an eldest daughter, girl boss, billionaire. And by performing intellectualism, if it's not clear, because I know she's not getting on stage and saying that she's Albert Einstein, I'm mostly talking the lyrics here. And her personal branding as a legendary songwriter already, as a word nerd. And if you are a Swiftie and you are still like a fan of this specific album, I'm probably going to lose you here. And I know I'm outnumbered, and that's fine. I think everyone's entitled to their own music opinions. I have talked about that on at least 2 other episodes of this podcast. What I do feel strongly about though is that we need all opinions to be able to coexist, because they did at a certain time, and then things changed. But to her credit, Taylor's, I do think that she has put out some catchy songs in the past. I think that Shake It Off is a great pop song for children. And I think songwriting wise, most people would agree that those COVID albums, what I have heard of them personally, which is not that much, but from what I know, an improvement from other stuff. So I'm not saying it's all bad. But I think overall, still, there is like an objective gap between the depth and skill of the actual writing of the lyrics and just writing for performance too. Like there are certain words that she includes in her lyrics that just, it doesn't work when you sing those words. That's a whole other conversation. I don't want to get too nitpicky, but there's a gap between what's actually there, like artistic merit wise, intellectualism wise, and how it's being marketed, which is like, if you're a writer, you will love Taylor Swift, which, unless you're Colleen Hoover, is, I would not agree with that claim. I have shared more thoughts already than I planned to in a few videos, so go watch those. I have like 3 different ones. One about the lyrics that really stood out to me in a bad way. Then her like gaslighting public interview response, and then there's like a silly one that, you know, I redid the classic poem Footprints in the Sand, but if Taylor wrote it. And again, posting something Life of a Showgirl related on Substack, and then putting this all to bed. So I will try not to be too redundant here, but I do have to say I am relieved. It has felt a little like Christmas on socials in a way. Multiple gifts to unwrap. The first being that even some of her fan base is waking up to the emperor not having clothes. We've been waiting for you, and it's fine that you're here now. That's beautiful. The second is the resurgence of actual critique. And some people are not very happy about that, and I'm sorry, but journalists and everyday folks like you and me have something to say, and they're saying it. We're holding on to free speech as long as we have it, even though it really does feel like saying anything against her empire is like saying something against a politician. And it has always felt that way, but like we're still feeling that now. I do think that criticism, writing wise, is an art. And she said that she's not the art police, which is something that the art police would say. Let's wake that up. But you can't arrest us all for having well-formed opinions. I'm sorry. It's hard, I think, really to know where to start with why the album doesn't work. Which I don't even know if that's the right metric of it like working or not, but why it just isn't enjoyable as a music project, like in part, or as the sum of its parts. And I don't think I can do like an academic deep dive into Taylor land, because even as a music lover, pop music lover, even, believe it or not, haters would say I'm not. That's not true. Um, my knowledge of her like discography and like the relationships behind all the albums, the lore, the stories, I know a little bit, but I do remain largely ignorant. But she's so exposed overly exposed that like I have heard a good amount still. It's just like I don't know all the Easter eggs. By the way, she needs to run the Easter Bunny his, her, or their check because we have taken the term Easter eggs way too far. Um, but again, I've heard enough to form my own judgments. So that's where I'm coming from. Like, as an enjoyer of pop music who is curious as to what any of this is about. Sue me for being curious. But even as a fan could tell you, the any of her album concepts, right? The aesthetic, the alleged storytelling, because she always does the variants about like the story behind everything. And as it relates to her personal life, sometimes that's a big deal. That's a huge part of like the DNA of anything she puts out. Everything is intentional, which we can't confuse with being deep or intellectual. I want to make that distinction clear. The same thing with like we need to make a distinction between cleverness and craft. Um, those things don't often go together as much as people would think. So again, everything's intentional doesn't mean that it's deep. But whether you enjoy the life of a showgirl or not, I do think it's fair to question whether or not um, Taylor is now in her Christian tradwife era, in her beige era. Maybe not from like the colors of the album. I think she's had plenty of literally beige albums before. But in terms of the engineered to identify with gentrification and eugenics, I think we can slap that on this album pretty comfortably because that's what the lyrics and the music are telling me. Starting off with the fate of Ophelia at the start of the album, which a lot of people I think are calling one of their favorite songs. It does have a little bit more going on melodically. I find it extremely annoying, but people like the song. Music aside, let us take a look at these lyrics. I pledge allegiance to your hands, your team, your vibes. Listen, Linda, I have obnoxiously mentioned before that I was a poetry major. That has nothing to do with Taylor Swift's lyrics as a whole. But I'm saying that here again because I consider myself a highly like idealistic, romantic, passionate person, just slightly delusional when it comes to love. However, comma, if I caught myself writing, I pledge allegiance to a man, to his hands. And I've probably written a poem about a man's hands before. Let me be genuine and real here. But I pledge allegiance. That is sinister. I would need to end the relationship. I would like throw up, I think, at a minimum. That is sick. Let's not bring Uncle Sam into this as a third, okay? And forget about the forced rhyme of vibes there, whatever the fuck that is. Travis Swagga vibes. It can only go downhill from pledging allegiance. So that's a rough start. And then there's the song Wood later on in the album, her ode to Travis Jr., the alleged 2x4 in his Kansas City briefs. People are saying that she's trying to reheat Sabrina Carpenter's nachos, which have barely lost any heat. She literally just took them out of the microwave in the first place. And I can maybe see that she's trying to like get on the sexual charades bandwagon, which is my term, I guess, for at least like the white pop girlies now, like performing what they think sexuality should be and just really like shoehorning in like erotic metaphors that like don't really land instead of like actually embodying sensuality at all. You can't really fake that and it's really uncomfortable. That's the thing. It's not the fact that she's singing about his dick, okay? Like many people have sung similar and sung worse before. I'm not a prude and you probably aren't either. And if you are, that's okay. But that's not the problem. It's just that it feels like it's written and sung and performed by someone who has never even seen one before, in a way. And I don't know how you get away from that. I think it's a little bit more believable with Sabrina Carpenter because it's like part of her act and it's kind of become woven into everything that she does. Even though I'm not 100% buying it, it still feels performative on the topic of being performative. But for Taylor, it just feels off. And again, I mentioned I was not going to get like too redundant here and go song by song. I do call out other specific songs in one of my videos, so go ahead and check that out on Instagram or TikTok. But on the topic of like beige trad wife Christian values and dog whistles, I do think that Wish List is probably up there. Wish List with the dollar sign S's. Take a look at those lyrics about wanting the whole block to look like Travis Kelce. Not got the whole block looking at him, like look at your football playing fiance. Not that. The whole block looking like him. Again, not everything is super deep, but everything is intentional. And I said in that same video, you can't tell me that all of this, these choices that she has made, that it's not that deep because the average Swiftie is scuba certified. I said almost that verbatim in that video. And then there were some people who commented, what does scuba certified mean? And I'm not going to answer that, but I will say, and I'm sorry if that was you, but I will say that that is proof to me of why her music continues to be successful. And why we need to reopen some schools. Anyway, there are plenty of songs from a music and lyric standpoint that are just floppiana after floppiana, but Wishlist is number one on my shit list personally. I didn't even touch on the fact that she has sampled without credit many artists. She has interpolated, and I use that term generously. She's like ripped melodies and riffs from known artists, from, famous boy bands, from the Jonas Brothers to the Jackson 5. And this is the same artist who got litigious with Olivia Rodrigo, former protege, for writing a song that was vaguely similar to part of one of her songs. So those sorts of things just like make me lose respect for an artist that I previously felt kind of neutral about as a person. Like I didn't enjoy Taylor Swift's music, but as like a business person, as an individual, she's just kind of there, not my cup of tea, not my favorite celebrity, but you start to see like the layers pulled back on this bejeweled onion, and it's not looking so pretty. So like I said, you can check out the other videos if for any reason you want to hear any more takes on this album. But something that I never commented on, I don't think, that has just kind of stuck in my brain is the caption for the engagement photo. Because everything she's doing and Travis is doing leading up to this album, leading up to the NFL season, it's all, there have been, marketing milestones. But for the caption of the engagement photo, if you remember, she wrote, "Your English teacher and your PE teacher are getting married." And she got clowned for being millennial cringe, understandable. But I would like to clarify that Taylor Swift is not your English teacher. She is your PE teacher, if I can pile on and say something else inflammatory, because they may not be able to run the mile or do 20 push-ups or dance on beat, but they're going to put on some music and they're going to make you think that you could if you tried. And there's a great quote about PE teachers from the movie School of Rock, and you can look that up. But as someone with an English degree and as a former teacher who worked with many other kinds of teachers, I feel comfortable rewriting that caption. Okay? Your PE teacher and a guy that's in between jobs at local Dick's Sporting Goods locations are getting married.
Microtrending.
My stance, I guess, on continuing to not roast, lightly saute the Travis and Taylor situation is just that it is a response to what's in front of me. Stuff has happened in their personal lives, obviously with this album and the NFL season. The exposure is ramping up again. And as someone who has to be online for beyond the personal stuff that I'm doing, it's literally part of my 9 to 5 job, it gets to a point. And if she can subject us to 20 plus variants of a flop, I will subject other people to variants of my thoughts. Okay, it's all that I have. That's not true. I have more to offer, but you know, apologies, but not sorry, not sorry, which is a great pop song by Demi Lovato. Okay, next and last, I do want to return to the questions that people had submitted to an AMA that I posted probably a week and a half ago at this point. And I took screenshots of all of them, and I obviously did not have time to read and answer all of them last time. So we're going to keep it cute and do a couple more. This person asked, what does the barrel pant say about our political / cultural moment? If you don't know what the barrel pant is, it is, or like the barrel leg jean. I know it's not just denim. I feel like Free People is the biggest offender, but also obviously Anthropology, also part of Free People, that one company. I don't know what the exact term is in terms of like the construction, the shape of the pant, but they are designed to make you look a little bow-legged, which if that's what you're after, congratulations, there's a pant for you. But there was a peak, I think, of barrel leg jeans. I don't know when it was. I think it was like a couple years ago, but they're still around. I'm still seeing them out there. I'll like pull out a pair of jeans and be like, whoa, that's not the cut I was looking for. In terms of what it says about the current political, cultural climate, I don't know if I have like the right answer. I could be wrong. I think it started out in a place of kind of how other jean trends were moving in this direction of away from skinny jeans. onto wider, more relaxed leg pants. And I think we saw that kind of from 2020 onward, where we were like in cozy mode and just the style trends. I think the Gen Z influence really took hold and TikTok accelerated that. And there's definitely somebody who probably knows more about how the barrel leg jeans came into being. Like, where was that really coming from? But at the start, it really did feel like it was coming from a place of casual style, feeling even a little bit more relaxed and kind of like effortlessness. There's an actual term for this that I'm forgetting right now. I think it's like Italian. And I think with that like slightly more relaxed style, like you're not wearing sweatpants, but the silhouette is a little bit more relaxed. There is with that also kind of the blurring of gender lines when it comes to dressing. I think we've seen a lot more of that now, just like pant styles that are not signaling any specific gender identity, if that makes sense. Again, I think somebody else probably knows a little bit better about what has been going on in Pantland. But fast forward to 2024, 2025, just like the past year or so, with the proliferation of more like trad content, homesteading, the tallow girls. Okay. And not, I know everyone says Nara Smith, but like also Ballerina Farm and probably countless other influencers that I'm not seeing. I think now the barrel leg pant is, to me, more aligned with you were trying to cosplay Yosemite Sam, Yosemite Samantha. It's giving Manifest Destiny. It's giving Eureka. It's giving panning for Ozempic. I don't know. Barrel leg pants look like they could walk on their own, like they could just get up and walk away from you, and they will probably at some point when they're done with your bullshit. But they also, I think, have just taken on a life of their own. I hope that they all convene and form a colony in Utah at some point and leave us alone. Anyway, those are my thoughts on barrel leg pants. Next, do you think Hillary Clinton is a good person? Um, I think there are worse people, but I do not think she is a good person. Next, can Disney adults be saved? I love this question. Um, in part because I don't know the answer to it, and I love that this is making me think. I do think some of them can. Like any Stan situation, I think there are some Disney adults who are pure of heart. And then I think there are some who are more sick in the head than the Mad Hatter from Alice in Wonderland. And I hate to spoil your childhood if it wasn't spoiled already, but that dude was suffering from lead poisoning. He was a lead head. Was Lewis Carroll? I don't know. But we were watching a lead induced crash out fever dream, telling someone to have a very happy unbirthday. That's what some Disney adults sound like when they try to speak like a normal person. Anyway, how do we gauge which Disney adults are normal and which Disney adults need help? I don't have a diagnostic yet, but I do think we should look into whether they are like religious zealots otherwise, because that combination is dangerous because there's like the uber Christian, like MAGA Disney adult. Like they might not be gun owners, but I would still fear them in some way. So like maybe looking into any religious affiliation. And then also I want to know what their favorite Disney movies are and properties. Like that I think could tell us a lot. And I do think we would need to enlist some like actual Disney experts who are like sane to be able to gauge like, okay, this Disney adult is on the normal side. And then this Disney adult has a near fetish level fascination with the Hunchback of Notre Dame. They're out there. And that's actually probably the best of them. There's some darker shit going on there. And then for the ones who can't be saved, because the question was, can Disney adults be saved? The ones who can't be saved, I think this already exists, but just like those barrel leg genes need to form their own colony, like go away, I'm pretty sure just like there's the villages somewhere in Florida, I think that there is like a Disney owned and operated like living community. Um Somebody else might know a little bit better. I remember seeing something about this. If that exists, if we could just like pop up a few more of those, especially, I mean, obviously close to the theme parks, but like I have this theory that the further you are away geographically from the Disney parks on either coast in this country, like especially in like the upper Midwest, that like Disney craving ends up transforming and turning into being a crazy Christmas person, like someone who has Christmas decorations up for way too long. It's like kind of one and the same. And I say this as someone who love like I'm a Christmas girl, okay? Putting that out there. I always have been. My birthday's around Christmas. It's my favorite season. That's about as corny about anything as I'll get. And I enjoy Disney a normal amount. I grew up with it, the movies, Disney Channel. I didn't go to the parks that many times, but the times that I did, I loved it. And I went recently with an 8-year-old cousin. Had a great time. I think there's a way to like enjoy it normally without being a Disney adult, but there are people all over this country who have this very specific sort of fandom in their soul, whether it's Christmas, whether it's Disney, whether it's other properties that are now owned by Disney, Marvel, or whatever. These people deserve to find each other and find love and live together and maybe like leave us alone. And I don't mean that on some segregation bullshit. I mean it out of love. And that's not to say that you can't exist in society otherwise, but like clearly that is your first or second religion. And I support that from afar. So, do I think Disney adults can be saved? Some of them. There are a lot of great questions here, so I'm going to have to keep saving these. Two really quick ones that I can answer here, and then I can save maybe some of the meatier ones for next time. But this person asked Olipop or LaCroix. Both. I would say I drink LaCroix a lot more often. Here's the Sunshine LaCroix with me here. I'm not really a purist when it comes to sparkling water. I'll take a Waterloo. I had the Guy Fieri Flavor Town Waterloo. It was pretty good. I like bubbly. No bubbly shade here. But when it comes to those like prebiotic sodas, I'm Olipop I prefer slightly to Poppy. From like a brand perspective, I think Poppy is kind of really trying to do an influencer play in kind of an unattractive way. I don't really know how to describe it. There's like branding choices that they make that I don't love. And flavor wise, I think Olipop delivers a little bit more. And there's more actual like probiotic and fiber stuff in Olipop. So I'm Team Olipop over Poppy, but you can't make me choose between my two children. I love them equally, LaCroix and Olipop. It's so hard to choose a favorite LaCroix, um, but I think my favorite Olipop is the root beer one. And then again, this one I can just answer quickly. Drop the lip routine, please. It is different all the time, but for a lip liner, I almost always use the Makeup Forever pencil in Endless Cacao. There's also the Wherever Walnut one, but I usually use the cacao one. Portlandia reference. And for lip gloss, I usually use the Lawless brand. I think that one is worth the money. I think there's plenty of lip glosses that aren't. Lawless is a clean beauty brand, and the texture and just everything about it I love. If I'm wearing lipstick, it's almost always from MAC. My favorite colors are Thanks It's MAC and Angel. I also love the Dior Lip Glow Balm Stick. It's kind of one of those like pH lip balms. And then on the more affordable side of things, I have gone through multiple tubes of this. If I'm ever wearing anything that's like more of like a brighter pink or fuchsia color, it is the Maybelline Lifter lip gloss in bubblegum. I am obsessed with that product. I love how it smells. It is so glossy and better performance than a lot of stuff you can find at Sephora. So love Sephora, but I also love me a drugstore lip gloss.
Microtrending.
As I mentioned before, I will return to some more Q&A next time. Thank you again for anyone who answered with questions. Was overwhelmed then, continued to be heartwarmed by anyone asking anything. So thank you so much. And as a reminder, I know I talked about this last episode, but I am on Substack now, if you care. It's still username saltlacroix, but the Substack is called Salt on the Table. It's reviews, rankings, rants, I guess. My current plan is to post free Substack posts on Fridays, and then still working on what the paid content will be, but that is in the pipeline for now. Totally free to subscribe. I'm a little over 100 subscribers right now, which is crazy. So thank you for subscribing and for reading. I hope to be able to water that plant a little more soon. And yeah, would love to know what you thought of the album that shall not be named that I've already talked about enough. I really do actually appreciate the perspective of Taylor Swift fans because they are not all crazy at all. I think many of them are music lovers and enjoyers. So especially if you are a Swiftie or a Taylor Swift fan and you have opinions on the album, I would like to know. Anyway, in any event, thanks as always for listening, for liking, for commenting, for sharing, for subscribing wherever you're listening. It means a lot and I always appreciate it. And I'll see you soon. Bye.
Microtrending.